But let's start in Serie A, because huge game between Napoli and Milan. Napoli in a position where when they took the pitch, Inter had won, so they needed to win to stay 3 points back. They race out to a 2-0 lead. I mean, 2 goals in the first 20 minutes, 20-odd minutes?
Yeah, first goal after 62 seconds.
Milan do not start well. Again.
Too
much João Felix on the pitch.
Yeah.
And then the second half turns into this thing where with Napoli defending and Milan attacking, taking a billion shots. I think the XG at the end was about 2.5, missing a penalty. I want to start on the Napoli end because we have so much praise for Antonio Conte. I think rightly so, whatever it is. He's got all these advantages, but equally, he's there. Yeah, he's doing what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly.
He had no Scott McTominay. That was his reason for changing the system up, going to 4-3-3, playing David Neres and Politano instead of Raspadori, that Neres hadn't played in months.
Yeah.
But still, you're 2-0 up at home. I don't expect you to just kind of give the ball to the opponent and say,
I was a bit disappointed. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed. We've seen this before. It's very Conte-esque kind of scenario and the pattern of the game, really. But I was a little bit disappointed because in the end, they won and they were very happy. And you saw Conte's reaction at the end and the players too. It's a big game, especially to respond to Inter. But then you could have played maybe 5 more minutes and they would have got a draw and Milan would have scored because they were pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you would have been really disappointed and frustrated when you could have had more control of the game.
And I want to make this clear. It's almost philosophical. Like, I don't have a problem with you defending, playing on the counterattack, if that is your style of play. And with 2-0 up, I can see the logic in it. But if you do it, you have to do it well. So you have to either contain so the opposition only gets bad chances and bad shots. Otherwise, I could argue it doesn't work because, like I said, Milan could have scored a second goal.
Definitely.
I don't know that they would have necessarily deserved a point for
absolutely.
what we saw.
Yeah.
But I just, and there's so much data and analytics to support this that, if you score a goal, the best thing you can do is try to score a second one, and I think like Conte's there with the players every day. Conte knows best. He's right up there. He's talking about, they're fighting for the title. Which, funny enough, when he was winning, when he was top of the league, he was saying, "Oh no, we can't win the title." And now that he's in second place, it's all motivation. But yeah, that was a little disappointing for me. On the Milan end, wow. So I want to start with the penalty. Lucas Hernandez, Philip Billing, and Lucas Hernandez. I know it's late in the game.
Theo.
Theo Hernandez. Philip Billing is obviously a very large man with long legs.
Yeah.
It looked to me like 1,000%. Theo Hernandez is running with the ball. Philip Billing is alongside him. Theo Hernandez sticks his little leg in between Billing's 2 big legs and goes down.
Yeah.
He
slows down as well. He basically makes the kind of some sort of collision happens. I think he was smart. I don't know if smart is the right word. He tricked him. I think Billing should have known better. Everybody watching, we knew exactly what Theo Hernandez was going to do. He was always going to do that, and maybe Billing could have avoided him a little bit more. But yeah, he tricked him and tricked the referee in a way because...
Would you have given that penalty if you were a referee?
So I think live he has to give it because I think from where he is...
the angle is...
The angle, you could see that, Theo is in front of Billing and then Billing goes and clutches him.
But he clatters him because he sticks his leg out.
Yeah, but I was surprised there was no call from VAR to go and say, come and have a look and see if really it's more Theo who kind of, start the collision really than anything else. And Billings is quite nice. He's like, no, I promise you I didn't do anything. Like, I'm not even sure how we happened to be here, but yeah.
It didn't matter in the end because Santi Jimenez takes one of the worst penalties I've seen in a long, long time. Interestingly, Christian Pulisic, many thought was the designated penalty taker. He had a really poor game.
Yeah.
He let Jimenez take it. No controversy there, says Conceição. We'll see about that, but more controversy around Milan because this was a big defeat. I just want to talk a little bit more about Napoli. And again, McTominay wasn't there.
Yeah.
But he's really had a monster season.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because you'll get many Manchester United fans, starting with Mark Ogden, who, they make the McFred joke and about how rubbish he is. And so therefore Serie A is a joke because McTominay dominates in Serie A. What's your take? Is the truth somewhere in between?
I don't know if the truth is somewhere in between. I think if you play on his strength, like Conte and this Napoli team do, I think you get a good version of Scott McTominay, who maybe I think benefited as well from going away from the whole United bubble and pressure, expectations, whatever you want to call it, to go to Napoli, where there's only one game a week. We've said that there's no European competition for now, where he was able to focus on what he had to do in a very structured team, which I think suits him.
Maybe he was a better coach than the guys who
absolutely with a really good coach and with really good players around him. I think the fact that he's got Billy Gilmore with him and he's just not on his own over there. There's other players who speak English in that squad. I think that has helped him to settle in and do well. But he was not a bad player. He was a United. He was just, I don't think the way that team played or the chaos around that team and the fact that he was obviously through like United through and through just didn't help him. I think he benefited massively from going away from there.
Yeah, I would also add that he was kind of stuck, certainly in the latter years, in that situation where, because at Napoli, he basically plays as an attacking midfielder.
Behind the striker,
Yeah, not like a pretty number 10, as a physical number 10, but obviously, technically he's not bad. He runs into the box, he outmuscles sort of smaller defensive midfielders, gets a shot off. The number 10 role at Manchester United belonged to Bruno Fernandes, who is a much, much better player than he is. And so he adapted to playing deeper in midfield, in central midfield. And despite the fact that he's big and strong, that's not what he's good at. That's basically what we're saying.
Exactly, absolutely.
And
so
I don't think
that's what I mean. If you play on his strength, then you have a good player.
So is this an example where maybe if McTominay or the people around him had said, look, this is your position, not where you're playing here, and you can't play this position at United, if he'd moved to, say, a top 8 Premier League team or top 10 Premier League team, he could have written an entirely different career?
Maybe, but I also can understand why you don't want to leave United, especially when
he loves the club.
Yeah, when you've been there since such a young age, and it's the biggest club in the country, and you want to do well. There must be a feeling as well of that. Okay, at some point they're going to be good again, United, and you want to be part of that. Imagine being part of a good United team that win things like in the Fergie years. There's nothing better than that.
But you do it as I guess you would be doing it as a squad player, right? You wouldn't be doing
probably.
It because he realizes that maybe when he plays in front of the back four, he realizes, and the team does badly and he gets criticized, he realizes it's not his position.
Yeah, absolutely. Even as an 8, in the midfield 3, for example, he's still not his best position either.
And he's not good enough that United were going to go and build the team around him.
Yeah, completely. And to be fair, there's not many teams where that would suit him and his qualities. Really, certainly not much better than this Napoli side.
It's funny because I always wonder how many players kind of fit that mold, kind of fit in that crack where, maybe they're the first reserve off the bench or kind of like the worst player at a big team.
Yeah.
But elsewhere, they would really dominate. There's a lot of examples like that. I think some players, maybe once they leave later in their career, they kind of have a revival or resurgence. Maybe that's what's happening with McTominay.
Yeah.
Napoli's still well placed. I just on the title race, obviously Inter won. To me, it's what you said earlier. Napoli have a week to prepare for every game. They can be rested. They can run like maniacs when they get on the pitch. And by the way, and to me, that was one of the reasons I thought the second half was disappointing. I said, you've got the energy, you've got the intensity. Sure. Milan have a huge game coming up in midweek. Obviously, the Coppa Italia derby semi-final against Inter. Inter have a million games between now and the end of the season. I mean, obviously, it depends how far they go in the Champions League. But I think they have 8 games in the next 4 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it. Impose yourself. Don't leave yourself where a goalkeeping error, one mistake, Jimenez taking a better penalty, cost you points at home.
Yeah, and maybe it was the international break just before, and pretty much every Napoli player, or maybe not all of them, but loads of them went away with the national team. come back. I mean, I suspect Santi Jimenez didn't start for Milan because he was away with Mexico and it's a long way
I
to
think
come
you're
back.
looking ahead to the Copa Italia. I have less of an issue with that.
Yeah, but there's still a better team with him than with Tammy Abraham. I think certainly yesterday on the hour that Tammy Abraham
Are you okay
played,
with Pulisic not taking the penalty?
I'm okay if it came from him.
No,
if it came from him, I'm okay.
So Conceição explanation, he says, we have 3 penalty takers on the team. Presumably, none of them is called Theo Hernandez at this point, I would hope. I would assume it's Pulisic, Jimenez and
Reinders, Oleao, yeah, maybe.
Or maybe Reinders, I don't know. They've missed 4 penalties this season, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And he says, and I always leave it up to the players on the pitch to sort it out between them. So the only one thing I don't like is because Christian Pulisic's leadership has been called into question when he was with the national team.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, he is more, I'm going to say he's introverted, but he's more of a lead by example type than rip my shirt off, Hulkamania type. I don't think this shows a lack of personality. If Jimenez is there, he says he wants to take it. Pulisic is having a bad game.
Yeah.
He says, all right, you're up for it. I trust you. I trust you, my teammate. I empower you. I have no issue with that.
But in a sense, that it also shows leadership that if you don't fancy a penalty because you're not feeling great, you're not having a good game, it's just not working for you today, and somebody else wants to take it, and that you give it to him. I think if it comes from Pulisic, I've got no problem with it. I don't think he's shying away from his responsibilities at all, because that's part of the responsibilities.
All right, I want to raise an issue here. I put this out on social media, and people said, but it's been the same thing for 3 years.
Is it your Kyle Walker rant?
Yeah, the more I watch that second goal, okay, Milan's defenders, Pavlovic and Gabi, are not good for the first goal.
Yeah.
Not good in general, and we can debate that.
Yeah, first goal too easy for sure.
Second goal, and honestly, if you get a chance to see the video of this, please watch it. Because what happens is Lukaku's running at the 2 center backs. The 2 center backs are close to each other, exactly where they need to be.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess because once Lukaku gets up ahead of steam, it's hard for him to stop. He runs past them into an offside position.
Yeah. Like really on his own by then. He's literally on his own. Yeah, completely. Right? Because he should be offside.
And then I think it was David Neres. Walker is chasing David Neres down the wing. But Walker's even though Walker's supposedly the fastest thing on 2 legs, he gives David Neres he's 2 meters away from him, backing off him. So Walker backtracks and doesn't realize that in so doing, he's playing Lukaku onside.
Yeah.
And he's also looking straight across the pitch. So he's looking at Lukaku.
Yeah.
I cannot conceive of a mental error like this when you are a veteran player who's brought in to do this. And you're going to say, yeah, but people on social media said, oh, that's what he did the last 3 years at City.
I mean, I think for me, that's what he's done a lot in his whole career, not just the last 2 or 3 years. Even when he was a bit better before, he never had, for me, certainly the tactical intelligence. I mean, this is not even intelligence. This is just basic of your line of 4 and you having to be at the same level as the other 3 defenders in your back 4, basically. I guess maybe, I don't know. I'm not surprised. I was not surprised watching the game. I don't think he should have been at Milan. Should have been signed at Milan. I don't think he's done great since he moved over. And certainly that's a massive mistake. You're absolutely right, especially with this kind of experience. At this level, when you've just considered a goal after 60 seconds, then you take this one, and then the game is not over, but it's a mountain to climb there, and it's not good enough. To be fair, when I saw you, and Gilmour does really well, I think, but it looks like even Gilmour is surprised that Lukaku is still onside when he gives him the ball because he's so on his own. And Lukaku almost fluffs his shot because maybe he's surprised that he's not offside. And that's all thanks to Kyle Walker. So obviously, best Napoli player in that first half was Kyle Walker.
Yeah, and the thing that would drive me mad if I were a Milan employee is Kyle Walker isn't even in the top 50% of bad Milan signings this January, because Sotil definitely, who contributes nothing ever, and of course the ghost of João Felix, who started this game. I'm guessing because he's. And this is again.
Leao should start really. Let's be honest.
Okay, this is where Sergio Conceição ties in. I'm going to spend a minute on Sergio Conceição because he addressed Leao, right? He said, it's obvious why Leao didn't start. You're keeping him for the game on Wednesday, right? Because I'm assuming you are not such a moron that oh, look, let me play João Felix on the right wing, right?
Yeah.
And he goes out and he says, well, but Leao was never going to start anyway. And I'm like, that's kind of like saying, like, I have an empty skull. Like, I don't believe you, right? You're either lying or you're stupid, right? It's obvious that you would have started Leao if you didn't have this game on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
I refuse to believe that you're like, oh yeah, let me play João Felix on the left. On the left. He also said something, which again really bugs me. I understand you're fiery, but he went on and on about how he was just like Antonio Conte. Yeah, just like Antonio Conte minus the titles and I suppose with better hair. He said, Mr. Intensity and all this stuff. And they asked him, like, do you feel that, you have the faith or the approval of the Milan hierarchy? Standard question.
Yeah, standard questions after another defeat.
And he says, like, I'm not a child who needs his daddy's approval. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about?
But his communication has been dreadful, really.
It is absolutely terrible. And I'm wondering, like, does he talk to the players that way? Because if they do, they must be thinking, what is this freak show? I don't know. I struggle with that.
João Felix, by the way, 18 passes tried.
22 to an opponent.
18 passes. So he's got 100% passing accuracy in this game. So I'm like, okay, yeah. And then only 1 passes of those 18 in the final third. So basically every pass has been either sideways or maybe forward, but not too far forward because not in the final third or backwards. And 55 minutes, 20 touches, none in the box. It's just not. You
20 touches in 55 minutes.
You played with 10 men, really. And I know Milan were obviously 2 goals down and the second half was the better one from them and he didn't play. He only played 10 minutes of it. But clearly you could see the difference when Leao came on. And naturally, he's a better fit and player there. But so poor from João Felix again.
Can I say it? Can I come out and say it? Do not be fooled by João Felix just because he looks good in the highlights. Remember we did a quick... Chelsea played a bunch of Muppets in the FA Cup and he had moments of fantastic skill, right?
Absolutely.
When will people learn that you cannot fix this guy? Or rather, if you want to fix this guy, say, hey, João, let me go and fix you. But the only way this works is if you take a massive pay cut, if you come someplace, if you work every day, and I'll be Mr. Miyagi, and you'll wax on and you'll wax off, and you'll actually work, and you'll be humble. And not just because, oh, look, coach who happens to have the same agent and whose kid used to be your roommate decides to bring you in. I mean, come on now.
I know.
And you know what? He becomes Chelsea's problem at the end of the season.
Of course. And for a long time because
he's got
a long contract.
Yeah.
Great idea again, that.
And final point on Ibrahimovic, there was a lot of talk because Zlatan disappeared. It reminds me a little bit of, you're too young for this, but in the old Soviet Union, there were these situations where like sometimes you wouldn't see the Soviet leader for like months at a time. And they'd be, is he dead? Has he gone away? And then they suddenly reappear. Ibrahimovic suddenly reappeared.
Okay.
And he said, I had the flu. I had a really bad stomach bug.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the fact that I came to London to meet prospective clients without the club's chief executive, I might add. Yeah. And then I kind of got big-footed and the club's chief executive went and made his own list, flew to the States, spoke to Jerry Cardinale, who the nominal owner of Milan. And he says, like, and look, I was really sick. I lost a lot of weight. And I'm like,
I thought Lion never got the flu and Lion could not get sick.
I don't know what was up with him. He's still there. Like I do think Ibra can contribute in the right role. I don't know the inner workings. And I think if you make mistakes, and mistakes were evidently made in January, then there are consequences. I do think Ibra's disappearance is not a good look for the club. No. Even if he was sick, because you know what? He's sick, but I presume he can operate a mobile phone. But that's...
Is the whole season on Coppa Italia now? Because the league is like, they're 9 points behind 5th place or something like that. It's just, so what? Is it
it's
all
a really
on the
heavy, it's a really, really heavy lift. Yeah. And it's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact, obviously, on their finances because they're run, unlike many clubs, they're run like a business. Yeah. So they want to turn a small profit every year. Yeah, it's held in the Coppa Italia. So stay tuned for the big derby against Inter. All right, enough Napoli. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's go, guys.
Manchester City come from behind to beat Bournemouth 2-1 and advance to the FA Cup semi-final for the 7th consecutive year, as Pep Guardiola noted afterwards.
Yes.
Jules, other than Erling Haaland's finishing, I actually thought City looked pretty good. Really good. Better than they looked in a long time.
Yeah, better at times for sure, especially in that second half. I mean, I never thought I would say that Nico O'Reilly made a massive difference, but he did, to be fair.
Did you really? Like, I obviously you served the 2 assists, but on ITV it seemed as if they had, like, when the broadcasters showed the right. They made it seem as if, like, you know, they had brought on God at halftime and he had parted the waters, or Jesus, I guess, or no, actually, who parted the waters?
Yeah.
I should remember this. Moses.
Moses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Moses. But I thought throughout the game and throughout that second half, Bournemouth had 0 shots on goal.
Yeah, the second half was all City, really. And the substitution from
And the first half, they could have been 3-0 up if Erling Haaland hadn't missed a hat-trick of chances.
Yeah, he missed that and the penalty, of course. But then I thought Bournemouth were, as we saw with the goal, they were quite into. I just think Bournemouth have run out of legs a bit and energy and gas, and the game is all on that. And to be fair to Guardiola, the changes that he made in the second half worked, and at half time, of course. I think they were well prepared to counter Bournemouth like they did. The absences for Bournemouth, I think, were a problem too. But De Bruyne maybe had one of his best performances for a very long time, I thought. And
how nice was it to see him start?
Yeah, for sure.
Bournemouth without their best player, for me, Milos Kerkez, and without maybe their best defender, Dean Huyson.
Yeah, second.
That's 2 guys suspended. That's half of your back 4.
Yeah, and you felt it, really. So it's a shame for Bournemouth because I think they really fancied that FA Cup run. But for City, the chance for the title, for a trophy, sorry. Gab, City will now face Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup semi-final. They overcame Brighton on penalties. More success for your friend, Mr. Marinakis.
Yes!
Yeah, you can spit on the floor to celebrate the win.
I might just do that. No. Look, this is impressive. Any way you slice it. People can look at Forest being defensive. This was such an odd game because obviously when they played Brighton earlier this year, I think it was November, was it? Or maybe it wasn't. Who cares? They won 7-0. They won 7-0 basically by sitting really deep. Brighton, the Hertzler attack. Yeah, we go this way, we go that way. And everything, like a million counterattacks and set pieces, and they beat them 7-0, right? In this game, I thought Brighton were dreadful. I thought Brighton... I don't need to say that Brighton need to play the stereotype and attack, but to sit... I don't know what Hertzler was thinking.
Well, not to get beaten 7-0 on the counter again. So they went for a much more cautious approach to avoid... But then when you see Hudson-Odoi and Elanga not starting, you know that Forest are not going to hear you on the counter until they come on. So Brighton could have taken that game by the scruff of the neck before. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly.
I understand why you could be on the back foot a little bit and be cautious, but not when you see the lineups.
He got this wrong. And by the way, in terms of who wasn't starting, Chris Wood was injured, who happens to be their top scorer, not starting either. I think Hertzler really, really laid a turd in this one.
I agree.
Look, you can say Forest are a better team. They're ahead of them in the table. They're third, whatever. Yeah, fine. But this is a cup semi-final.
It was in Brighton as well.
At home.
Yeah, at home. Yeah, definitely.
If you're going to go down, play your football and go down.
Sure.
Leroy Sané strikes twice and Bayern beats St. Pauli 3-2. Jules, according to the Marcotti theorem, their 6-point lead with 7 games to go means they can win it next week.
Yeah, in your theorem they can. They were under pressure because Bayer Leverkusen, who we mentioned a bit later, had played on Friday, had won before, so the gap was only 3 points. I know it was at home to St. Pauli, so I don't know how much pressure do you really feel if you're Bayern.
I think the 3rd best defense in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, but they went 3-1 up, and the second goal from St. Pauli is really late in the game. Michael Olise with a lovely game again, performance on the back of what he did with France. So pretty routine win for Bayern, and you're right, they're getting closer to the title.
Hiroki Ito now injured as well.
So. So they lost Ito, after Davies and Upamecano and Neuer already. That's a lot. Sticking with Bayern, though, Gabi, Bild in Germany reports that there is no new contract for Thomas Müller. Gab, is he really going to leave after 25 years at the club?
I don't believe that. So first of all, the headline's like Thomas Müller not getting a new contract. But then, if you go to the original Bild report, they actually speak to Bayern, and Bayern says, no, we're still talking to Thomas Müller, and we're still talking to Leroy Sané, and the other guys were Eric Dyer. Okay. Look, I don't think he's ever going to leave. I think he's like he's like the doctor in that stupid Star Trek spinoff. Like he can only one's a hologram and he only exists in the medical bay. He cannot exist anywhere else. He's not going to leave. I don't think he's going to play. He might not play next year, but he'll have some role at the club. I actually think maybe it'll be influenced if they win the Champions League in Munich, but of course they got to go through Ballon d'Or Martinez to do that. Of course. Assuming he's fit.
Yeah.
But no, look, Thomas Muller, I think you can go and say, hey, just, pay for meals and lodging or play for meals and lodging and you'll stick around. And that's how I want to see. Reduce his minutes little by little. Yeah. He's a club legend. Respect. Jules, we not done. We got more quick hits.
Yes.
Kylian Mbappe bags 2 goals as Real Madrid come from behind to beat Leganes at home 3-2. Jules, why does it feel that they haven't had a clean, straightforward win maybe since the Manchester City game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, this game sums it up. They take the lead.
Stupid defensive mistakes.
Yeah, and then maybe they take it for granted. They stop playing. They switched off a bit. They concede 2 goals. Really bad goals to concede. Like terrible goals to concede. Find themselves 2-1 down, and you think like, wow, okay, what's happening then? Then obviously Bellingham happens. And then Kylian Mbappe with, or maybe not, the first free kick of his career. Like, I'll let you decide that. I think it's not, but anyway.
Why? Because the guy touches it to him?
It's an indirect free kick, so that doesn't count as a free kick, I think. But it's still a really good goal. Anyway, then you win, but you win where you should have been cruising against this team, and then in the end, it's a bit tricky, and you look at it after and you think, okay, maybe this team is just doesn't have that kind of control, that kind of confidence, that kind of security, certainly not defensively.
Balance.
Yeah, or balance.
That's
even,
the word.
And sticking with Real Madrid, your boy Carlo Ancelotti faces a potential 4-year prison sentence for alleged tax fraud. What's going on?
So this is a case which actually has already been litigated in 2014-15. You remember he was the manager of Real Madrid. He got sacked at the end of the season.
Yeah.
The whole issue is he then declared that he was no longer living in Spain, and he earned some money through an image rights company. Tax people say, no, you were living in Spain from a legal tax point perspective. It's an alleged evasion of $1.1 million.
Right.
Now, I know Carlo Ancelotti, and I'm obviously biased here. I know for a fact he knows many things. Accountancy isn't one of them. Obviously, the tax lawyer set this up for him.
Yeah.
He's already settled, and he's already been cleared once. But what's happened is a higher court has appealed the sentence before,
right,
saying he deserves further punishment. He's not going to prison for 4 years.
No.
But he does have to go to court on Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
Which, isn't great for him and for Real Madrid.
Yeah, and Copa del Rey as well in midweek. So.
More Madrid. Vinicius Júnior, Kylian Mbappe, Antonio Rudiger, and Dani Ceballos
all of them.
all charged by UEFA for their conduct after the Champions League return clash with Atletico Madrid. Jules, they could miss the tie with Arsenal.
Really? So what is the way they celebrated, right?
It's the way they celebrated.
Over the top?
Mbappe touches his nuts. Vinicius goes and winds up the opposing fans.
Yeah, I mean,
Antonio
Ceballos
Rudiger does the throat slitting
gesture. That's right, yeah. I saw Ceballos after the pens almost embracing another player that was injured on the touchline. I can't remember who he was.
I think Ceballos he yelled an obscenity in the tunnel.
Right, okay. Well, Real Madrid cannot play without those players against Arsenal in the Champions League last 6 quarterfinals first leg. I think that would be a disaster. I think I could guarantee you they're not going to be banned.
I have that sense too. I think they're talking fines, suspended bans, perhaps. Look, I don't like winding up the opposing fans.
Sure, and you shouldn't, for sure.
But also the fact that this wasn't that big a story at the time. It almost came out later.
Yeah. That's true. That is very true. Kenan Yildiz scores a worldie and he got 2-0. Gets the 3 points for his first game as a Juventus coach as they beat Genoa. On his debut,
Genoa wearing the Boca Juniors shirt as an homage. Obviously, Boca Juniors founded by immigrants from Genoa. Look, Igor Tudor did exactly what you expected him to do. He went back 3. He put Kenan Yildiz where Kenan Yildiz is supposed to play, which is in the number 10 position. Well. He put Vlahovic where he's supposed to be on the pitch. Sorry, Randall. You'll find a different role. He went back 3, which is suboptimal when 2 of the back 3 are Lloyd Kelly and Renato Vega. But whatever.
Yeah.
They got the win.
Not great,
but they were more direct.
Yeah, true.
They created a number of chances. They could have scored more. Still needs to sort out coal miners. Still needs to figure out who's going to play in that. If you're really going to continue with the back 3, Bremer will be back at some point. But 3 points, important for the Champions League as well.
Definitely.
Paris Saint-Germain destroys Saint-Etienne 6-1 on the road. Jules, it's a 21-point lead with 7 games to go a draw next weekend or dropped points from Monaco, maybe even from Marseille too, guarantee the title.
Yeah, they'll be at the Parc des Princes against Angers on Saturday afternoon, late afternoon. They could have been champion this weekend. You mentioned it earlier,
They
Gabby.
beat Saint-Etienne 6-1, didn't they?
Yeah. So they could have been champion if Monaco had drawn and Marseille lost. But Monaco won, obviously.
No, but you
derby.
mentioned Angers at the Parc des Princes.
Yeah, on Saturday, come in.
Oh,
to win the
yeah,
title.
yeah, next week. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were glitching about the team you supported since childhood.
No, yeah. So
How dare
on
I?
Saturday, this Saturday coming against Angers, a draw would be enough. They could have won the title after that win against Saint-Etienne, where they didn't play well for the first half hour. They were behind. They were not good at all. Many changes from Luis Enrique. And then the flow was there. Désiré Doué was outstanding. He scored a goal that, again, would remind everybody of Neymar. And yes, he copies a lot of his game on Neymar, certainly the dribbling part of it, even the celebration part of it in this game. He's in great form. Kvaratskhelia scored, Gonzalo Ramos scored. It was in the end a very good hour from them, and yet they are absolutely walking this league.
11 titles in 13 years. From my view, this could be the most impressive.
Yeah, I think this is the best for sure. Inter stayed top with a 2-1 win over Udinese on Sunday, but Gabi got a little bit nervy at the end.
Yes. Poor Simone Inzaghi getting a red card for contesting some nonsense.
He was on the pitch, like literally on the pitch.
I don't like it when Simone Inzaghi loses his cool.
Yeah, true.
Udinese are a good side. Inter went up, and then they thought that they could cruise to in Inter's defense. You know, they're arguably their best wide player this season, Denzel Dumfries, not playing. Their best midfielder, Nicola Barella, not playing. Their best defender, Alessandro Bastoni, not playing. Barella came on as a sub, obviously. And, of course, Ballon d'Or Martinez not starting. Yeah. I think that does have an impact, and Udinese are a good side. But, again, they were focused on midweek and the derby. Barcelona destroys Girona 4-1, and Robert Lewandowski gets another 2 goals. Jules, let's not talk about his goal scoring. He turns 37 this summer.
Amazing.
He will likely set a personal record for games played this season. He's at 42 already. His record is 51. He could end up playing 57 games if Barca go all the way in all competitions. This is crazy.
It is amazing. I mean, I guess it helps when your wife is not just a personal trainer, but also a dietitian, and the lifestyle at home is very, very perfect on what they eat and what they do and how much they sleep, etc. All the recovery, because to still being going at this, and you can be 37, but maybe run a little bit slower than you used to. Maybe your turn is a little bit slower because you're just a bit older, but a bit like what Mo Salah is doing, and Lewandowski is obviously older than Salah. It's just amazing, I think, how they defy age.
Yeah, he credits when he did gymnastics when he was younger. He did judo. He credited for his flexibility for the second goal, which he twists himself into a pretzel. You don't see that at that age.
No, that's very true. Can't believe it took this long, and we mentioned it many times on the show. We even asked for it, really. But Marco Rose has finally been signed by RB Leipzig.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. No, look, when you get worse every year, he took over in September 2022. They finished third, and they finished fourth, and then they finished sixth. Yeah. Or they're not even finished sixth. They are sixth right now. This was inevitable. The most disappointing thing, you have the SOS up front. And Antonio Nusa, right? So Sesko, Openda, Xavi Simons, they're like mid-table in expected goals from open play, right? Terrible. So even though we make fun of their defending, and rightly so, because it's atrocious, their attacking isn't good either. Their XG terrible. So I put these things together. He had to go. None of these players have gotten better. Another sacking, Jules. This one kind of really not unexpected. Dorival Júnior relieved of the Brazil job after the 4-1 thumping by Argentina.
Yeah, no surprise there. I mean, the humiliation, obviously, even if it's away from home, but just the fact that you can lose a game. We said that at the time on the last show. The way they lost it, the fact that since Dorival Júnior arrived, there was not much of an improvement really collectively. Defensively, they've been terrible, conceding a lot of goals. I think 14 is in his 16 games. Just not good, not clicking with the ball either. And maybe this is not the best generation of Brazilian players, of course, only defensively. There's no doubt. Maybe even in midfield. But it was still just not good enough. And the instability on the bench is not helping them because now he's the third manager in very quick succession. So they have to get this one right, whether that's Jorge Jesus, who seems to be the favorite now. Carlo Ancelotti.
Good news for Neymar, huh?
Yeah, of
if
course.
Jorge Jesus comes.
I bet he would.
For those who are unaware, Jorge Jesus had him at El Hilal and basically said he's finished.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was injured a lot, and then when he came back, he was overweight. So, but they need to get this one right because it hasn't been good enough.
I think, I wrote a story on this when Dorival Júnior was appointed, and I looked at his Wikipedia, and I saw that he'd had like 28 jobs. He's old, but it's not like he's 150 years old.
No, yeah.
There's a serious problem, I think, in Brazil in coach development. And
yeah, you often say that. It's the 1 year, 2 year maximum.
Yeah, I have no problem with sacking coaches if they don't do their job, if you think somebody else can do a better job. But equally, there's this culture of continuous change, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way many Brazilian clubs are set up, that it doesn't allow for the development of coaches.
Yeah.
And the one guy, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who won the Libertadores, who he was rumored for the Brazil job, but then he didn't get it, or maybe was going to do both jobs at once, or whatever. He's one of the few guys who had actually some genuine innovation.
Yeah.
This is something they need to look at. I think it's something that the Brazilian FA should say, how can we better develop our coaches? And maybe you liaise with the club. I don't know. But it seems to me that it's pretty much a no-brainer. There's a reason so few Brazilian coaches ever pop up in Europe, for example, with better paid jobs. They don't get a chance to work in their home country. And I think Brazil, one last thing on this, they were lucky that they had Chichi for so long, who I think is one of the greatest coaches around. But he's the outlier. He's the exception.
Atletico Madrid, I held at Espanyol 1-1 as my boy Clément Lenglet gives up a needless penalty in that game. Gab, they're out of the title race, right?
What is this, like the weekend of older experienced players with brain farts?
Yeah.
Dude, you're pulling the guy's shirt on a free kick in the box. It's not even you're pulling it, and it's like you're like at the edge of the box. So it's not even a situation where it's like on a corner kick, maybe, we were pulling each other, he gets away with it, whatever. Like the guy's shirt extends like a mile, right? What are you thinking? But what was most disappointing about it, I just don't want to make this about him, but all this stuff, all this stereotype about Atletico Madrid. Oh, the deep squad. Oh, Cholo substitutions. Oh, they're great. They're never say die attitude. No, they had a rollover attitude. They go a goal up, and then they do nothing.
Yeah.
And then at 1-1, you expect the reaction. Nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
And it really flies in the face of that.
Yeah, disappointing.
Crystal Palace trounced Fulham on the road. I was not expecting this as Eberechieze steals the show. Jules, I think you predicted that Palace was going to win the FA Cup. You feel pretty good about this now.
Yeah, I still maintain it as well. What an efficient performance from them. I mean, just one stat sums it up completely. In the first half, Eze completed 2 passes. And in that same half, the first half, he had 1 goal, outstanding goal, and 1 assist. So one of the 2 passes is an assist for Ismail Assar. And that's it. So efficient. Some would say Australian efficiency, even for Oliver Glasner. Brilliant in both boxes. That's all you need for Fulham. Not sure not starting Raúl Jiménez up front was the right idea, but again, he's coming back from Mexico, which was not the case for Muniz. But yeah, it's a shame because I think it's a missed opportunity for Fulham at home, being at home in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, considering they never win it. They've never won it, sorry. But for Palace, great win. And now I think they will face Aston Villa in the semi-final at Wembley, and anything is possible, always.
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, definitely. Andrea Berta to Arsenal is confirmed as the new sporting director. Gabi, what should Gunners expect?
I feel like we've talked about him a lot because obviously this was also almost as telegraphed, but Arsenal released these pictures of him standing there with his friend Mike Garlic. I think there's 2 reasons why I think this is good. One is he's obviously very experienced. He worked at Atletico Madrid. They made some really good signings, found some really good value. I would expect Arsenal to have done their due diligence because Arsenal also made some spectacularly bad signings or players who they signed and then kind of disappeared. And Joe Felix, there you go. But also somebody like Thomas Lemar, right?
Yeah.
Superstar French international, didn't work out.
Yeah, expensive.
This is something where, look, I'm going to come out and say, I don't know, sue me. Atletico Madrid have an unhealthy relationship with Uncle George Mendes over the years, just in terms of the number of players in and out. It's benefited them tremendously with some, others, not so much. I would hope that Arsenal really did their due diligence and kind of, it's not even like which ones were Berta signings, which ones were not. But that would be the first question I would ask him. I would say, hey, Andrea, Did you think it was a good idea to spend 127 million on João Felix? Andrea, 80 million on Thomas Lamar. Is this all you? Or were there other people making decisions, right?
Yeah.
So, and I do that, and it says the answer. The reason I think it's good for Arsenal is that I think it's healthy when you don't, at a club, you don't have an all-powerful person. So you don't have, Sir Alex, it's different. Sir Alex Ferguson's an outlier, so it worked for Sir Alex Ferguson. But generally, when a guy has too much power, whether it's a coach, whether it's a director of football, we saw it with Arsene Wenger at Arsenal itself, it's not healthy. You want to have different viewpoints and a mix of backgrounds. And I think Arsenal have that because Mikel Arteta is here. Mike Garlick.
Richard Garlick.
Why do I keep calling him Mike?
Richard. Mike is nice as well as a name, but Richard.
Yeah. Richard Garlick, of course, has got a background in the culinary arts. No, just kidding. Who's got a background at Burnley, right?
West Brom, yeah.
Or West Brom?
No, yeah. West Brom.
Okay, there you go. But, and Andrea Berta, three very different backgrounds, the three of them. And of course, Josh Kroenke and his dad upstairs. So I like the fact there's different viewpoints having to come together. It may create conflict sometimes, but it's much better than a bunch of yes men.
Yeah.
Because that would be Mauricio Pochettino's coaching staff.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was totally backhanded, unnecessary, but possibly true. Let's go all the way back to Friday, Jules. Bayer Leverkusen beat Bochum 3-1. Victor Boniface gets his first start in ages.
Yeah, and a front two of Boniface and Schick, which we like. We asked before, especially with Wirtz being out now, a more kind of traditional way of playing for Xabi Alonso. And even if Bochum scored at some point to make it 1-1, it was never in doubt, really. No. Bayer Leverkusen were too good. And put pressure on Bayern because they came back to 3 points. Then Bayern won the next day, but it's okay. They will try to keep fighting. 7 games, we said earlier, 6 points in between. Yeah, it's I think a long shot for Bayer Leverkusen to retain the title, but I think they want to keep pushing.
By the way, you know how there's people who love the Bundesliga, maybe to an unhealthy amount, like some of our colleagues, who talk about how it's so pure because the ticket prices are low and the football comes first and this and that. Bayer Leverkusen play on Friday after an international break, and they have South American players.
Yeah.
I don't think, and they did it presumably because of TV, because they sold that Friday night game.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. That's not good.
I think Nkapie even started this game. So he must have arrived the morning of the game when we go straight to the stadium. Aston Villa roll over Preston 3-0 on Sunday and also through to the FA Cup semi-final. We said they will face Crystal Palace. But Gab, the story is Marcus Rashford scoring his first goal since he moved on loan from Manchester United. I think his first goal since the start of December, full stop.
Yeah. I don't think there's any question there. He's scoring, he's smiling, he's looking good. Obviously, the goals came in the second half, but I think Villa were on top from the start. Preston are just not particularly good. I don't think they're doing particularly well.
The first half was not good full stop from either team, really.
But I go back to one of my things. Some clubs, especially big clubs in England, don't like loan deals.
Yeah.
And I think they pay a price for it. And Unai Emery and especially Monchi, a lot more humble about this. Hey, look, I can get Marco Asensio. I can get this Marcus Rashford fella. I can get Alex Disasi. If they stink, I'm not stuck with them.
What's wrong with your first name? Axel even, not Alex?
Sorry. Axel Disasi, yes. Who played right back for France under Didier Deschamps.
Somehow.
But the point is, these people can help you. There's nothing wrong with it. If you're competing for a Champions League spot, even if you are, say, a Chelsea or a Manchester City, dare I say, this is not a bad way to go. It's not a humiliation if you do this. How about some love for Manuel Pellegrini?
Hey.
Betis win El Gran Derby against Sevilla. And suddenly, they're fifth level on points with Villarreal. I think 4 or 5 points behind
Athletic Club,
Bilbao.
Athletic Club, who are struggling a little bit at the moment and clearly will focus on the Europa League anyway. We've said that many times. First home win in the derby for Betis since 2018. The curse is over. It's been a very long time. They were waiting for it. Even if they went behind, they were the better team. Great Isco performance again. And at the end, Isco saying we need to start crowdfunding to be able to sign Anthony from Manchester United because we want him to stay. So really, really good win. And you're right, they're on the roll. Absolutely, Betis. They also have, by the way, the Conference League still. How about some... that's yours. Gab, it's not just Qatar Sport Investment, QSI, who are interested in buying Malaga. Who else?
There's an English club. In fact, they're not English.
Club.
They're scouse. Liverpool, Michael Edwards himself traveling
right.
down to Malaga,
Wow.
kicking the tires, taking a look. Like, the reason this is important is I think Malaga are the metropolitan area is sixth biggest in Spain.
Sixth biggest city, yeah.
And they have obviously a big airport. They've got big infrastructure. This
They
is
will
a
host
team,
the games of the 2030 World Cup.
and they're getting World Cup games.
Yeah.
A great stadium. There's a lot of potential there. They found, as we told you last time, 51% owned by. I don't know if it's the only rich Qatari who's not friends with the government or wasn't friends with the
Well, it's the
government.
same family, so he
Same
might-
family,
yeah,
but whatever. He's
Yeah.
like the weird black sheep cousin.
maybe.
Managed them horrendously. I mean, really, really badly, to the point that they've been in administration. So the idea is that you can pick this up for not a lot of money. That said, they're quoting 100 million. To me, that's still there's a lot of potential there, but that's still a fair amount of money. I think both QSI, who also, of course, as we told you, own Paris Saint-Germain, and Liverpool, I think they'll be getting to get that price down. Maybe there's something to be done where maybe pay 60 million and then pledge to invest 40 million, something like that. Because 100 million for a second division club in Spain.
Well, they're really their first division club in Spain.
But then
they are there
gotta,
now. But
you have to get them back up, and
Yeah.
then you look at the revenues of clubs outside the big three in Spain. You still got to get there. So
yeah, true.
Maximilian Bayer bags 2 goals as Borussia Dortmund beat Mainz 3-1. Jules, it feels weird to say this, but I did not expect this.
No, you're right. And Mainz, although not great team, but still doing really well in the Bundesliga this season. Dortmund not so much, even under Kovac. But in this game, they scored on 2 goals on set pieces, which was a massive help, and then a tap in after a mistake too. So maybe not the best performance on the ball. I think I like Maximilian Bayer. I wonder if they would have been higher if he'd been used a little bit more previously by Nuri Sahin after signing in the summer for quite a lot of money. But that's a win that certainly with this weekend of Bundesliga is going to help them massively, making a push toward the Champions League places.
I think they're still 10th.
Yeah, they're still
A lot
10th,
of ground to
but
make
it's-
up.
Yeah, that's true. Manchester United have reportedly lowered their ticket prices for members after it looked like they were not going to sell out the Manchester derby against City next weekend, Gab. This would have been unthinkable not that long ago.
Yeah, so I think we need to take this with a pinch of salt. This is a report in a tabloid newspaper here in England. And of course, United haven't confirmed the ticket thing. And tickets are still for sale. It's unthinkable to me that there'd be empty seats at Old Trafford for a Manchester derby.
Absolutely.
I think
the protest is strong, though. Protest against
the protest is
ticketing.
very strong. There's an element too that we should also point out. These are ticket prices for club members. So for those who don't know, the way it works is you have season ticket holders. Normally that's capped, so there would be a waiting list, and then you can pay X amount. You become a club member, and then you get preferential access to tickets. But you get preferential access to buying tickets. There's a bazillion other club members, and so it's not guaranteed. It doesn't give you the right to buy a ticket.
Exactly.
Put it that way. And also relative to the season ticket holders, it's not very many people. But they famously, we told you about this, they raised those prices to £66 for a game, which is more than $80, which again, NFL game, that's a pittance. That's what I pay for parking, in lot Z. Well, in the Premier League in England, to watch a football match, that is a lot of money, especially since they weren't giving any concessions for old people or kids. So they've lowered the prices reportedly to £40 for adults, £25 for old age pensioners and children. I'm glad they're responsive. The extra revenue they make from this is not worth all the bad pub that you're getting, Jim Ratcliffe, because I presume this is all you're part of your escamotage here to go and try to claw back some money. I don't know. Sell some Ineos stock. I don't know what to tell you. This is not the way to do it. You're just making fans angry, fans who already feel fleeced. They already don't like your majority owner. I seriously, I wonder if you were asking United fans, if the Glazer family and Jim Ratcliffe and his friend, sidekick Brailsford were in a boat
Brailsford.
and it was sinking, and you could only save one or one pair, who would United fans save? Now, I'm sure they would save Ratcliffe and Brailsford because, let's face it, the others are the Glazers. They hate them even more. But it's close.
Yeah.
It's very close.
Yeah.
Monaco come from behind to beat Nice. Oh, good. More Ratcliffe.
Yeah.
They beat them 2-1 in the Mediterranean derby. You're going to have to explain to me why this is the Mediterranean derby, but when they play against Marseille, who's also on the Mediterranean, not a Mediterranean derby, it's a something else derby.
Yeah,
I'm sure
because
there's a good
they're
reason.
so close. So, like, I don't know. As you know, they're just so close to each other, Monaco and Nice, that the sea is right there, like almost making them touch each other. So, I
So
don't
when
know.
Antibes plays Juan Le Pen, why is that not a Mediterranean
It
derby?
is. If
Oh,
it was
is?
happening, it would be as well, but it's not happening, obviously.
Okay, just wondering. Also, you got to tell me about Dante getting sent off at
Yeah.
age 41. Bless him.
I mean, I'm sure Sir Jim is watching because he doesn't watch Nice, as he said.
He says
remember?
because
He
the
said
level's
the level
too
is
poor
not
for
good
him.
enough. Yeah, so he wouldn't have seen his other team being beaten after taking the lead, as you said, Gabi. I thought quite a good game. Nice could have done better. I expected a little bit more, and Monaco missed a penalty after 5 minutes, so the game could have been over very early on. But Monaco responded well. Mika Biereth scoring again. Really massive win for Monaco because with the Marseille defeat away at Reims, that was completely unexpected. Then Monaco now are second behind PSG, which is where they want to be, obviously. So there's a massive race for the Champions League places in France, which is very exciting. And for Nice, they have massively slowed down now because they've, I think, only 1 point out of the last 9 or 2 points out of 9.
It
something
looked like
that.
they were thinking Champions League.
Absolutely, and they still very much are in the running. They can definitely do it. So at least it'd be good because if Nice qualify for the Champions League, Sir Jim would have one of his teams in the Champions League. Maybe not the one he wants, but I wonder if he would watch Nice in the Champions League or if the level of the Champions League is not high enough again for him to watch. Moise Kean does it again. Fiorentina beat Atalanta 1-0, and I think it's safe to say now that Atalanta out of this race for the title.
Yeah, the gap is just too big. If they're not careful, I think they need to worry about falling out of the Champions League places too, because Bologna, who we never talk about, are
Nope.
actually much better this year without Thiago Motta than last
Yeah.
year. Fiorentina, Moise Kean, he's the second leading scorer in Serie A. I think nobody would have thought this. Gasperini not helping himself. I think weird changes in the game. He took off all his strikers for attacking midfielders. Super angry afterwards. Came out and said, "I'm not coming back here next season." Yeah, we know that. He didn't sign a new contract.
Yeah.
It's on. It's off with him. Like I generally think he's kind of like burning every bridge to another club, to another big club, because I don't know. And it's a shame because he's
Yeah.
obviously very good at what he does, but you can't have this up and down.
No, and
all
it's
the time.
costing his team too and the club.
Speaking of title races, my boy Francesco Farioli and Ajax win 2-0 away to PSV Eindhoven and our pal Peter Bosch. 9-point gap, 7 games to go. The Marcotti CRM says this one's over.
Yeah, and they haven't won the title Ajax since 2022. So what a job Farioli is doing, really. I mean, this game was won with the ancient guard, really, because David Klaassen scored and then Bertrand Traoré scored. But they were the better team. They have great momentum. They have got great structure. The younger players are doing well, and I know it didn't happen for them really in Europe, like they would have, but in the league they are back on the top, and that they have been the best team so far this season in the league. So really, really good win, deserved one, and the title, you're right, is on its way.
Who was the Ajax manager the last time they won the title?
Oh, was he bold?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, it would
Maybe
have been
Dutch
bold.
too,
Maybe
but-
Dutch too,
But we don't remember his name, so we
no,
won't mention
exactly.
it.
We won't mention it. The Daily Mail reports that we could see loans outside of transfer windows to EFL clubs here in England, Gab. Would this be a good idea?
No, it would be a stupid idea. I understand why they're saying this.
Why are they doing it?
They used to have a rule called emergency loans,
Yeah.
like for goalkeepers and whatever. Ultimately, FIFA says no. You have a transfer window, and outside of which is really a registration window. Outside of that, you either register free agents or otherwise you just deal with the players you have, promote somebody from the youth team, and whatever. I think what happens is, maybe it's October, and maybe you've got a player who the manager doesn't like, and otherwise you stay on the bench. You could help an EFL club. I don't know. FIFA would have to go and approve this as
Yeah.
well. You have to understand, you may be an island, but you can't just go and do your own thing whenever you
know.
want. You can't have it both ways, guys. Come on. 80% possession, but Marseille lose 3-1 at Reims and Reims, even. Slipped to third place in Ligue 1. Jules, 3 defeats on the bounce for my boy De Zerbi.
Yeah, 4 in 5. It's not good at all. I mean,
Mason Greenwood's fault.
well, he had 2 chances, to be fair, that he should have taken, really, and that was costly. Then it disappeared completely. Luis Enrique, the other one, disappeared as well. And they the two top goal scorers in that team. Then they lost Balerdi, who was injured, but then stay on the pitch. Why? I don't know. Tried to keep playing, then made a mistake that cost a goal because he was injured, but didn't want to come off, if you follow me. It was just a terrible night. Terrible night. Reims hadn't won since November, and yet they go and beat the second best team in the league, just literally, just like this. Terrible from Marseille. So what does De Zerbi do now? As a good Italian, he takes all the players. They were supposed to have 2 days off, Sunday, Monday, no more days off, sleep at the training ground, old school Napoli, how do you say in Italian?
Retiro, it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you stay there. No, you don't see your family, you don't see your wife, you don't have the days off because the crisis is there. So they have to wake up, really, really do. Dani Alves' rape conviction has been overturned 13 months after he was convicted and sentenced to a 4.5 year in prison. Gab?
Yeah, so the reason we're mentioning this is because obviously we tell you when he's convicted, and I think it's also fair to tell you when he's cleared. Now, we should point out that it's not that the court found that this did not happen. It said that there were evidentiary inadequacies, and that the standard of proof wasn't met. Right. So this is kind of a not proven situation, which gets him out of prison. I think, unfortunately, in these situations, many times, sometimes you do have solid proof, and sometimes there is a standard of proof that has to be met. The first court felt that it was met. The second court felt that it wasn't met. It's due process. This can still be appealed by. They have a National Supreme Court in Madrid. I genuinely don't know. We can't pass judgment on what happened. All we can do is hope that the victim and Dani Alves reach some sort of closure, some sort of serenity, and they're getting the support they need, because it's a horrible story and shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Let's go way back to the other Women's Champions League quarterfinals, which you don't get to talk about because they happen on Thursday and we tape our show Thursday morning. That's not fair. Barcelona destroyed Wolfsburg, not a surprise, like 6-1, 10-1, whatever.
Yeah, 10-1 on aggregate, 10-2 on aggregate.
Chelsea overturned their 2-0 first leg deficit to oust Manchester City. Jules, what I don't focus on, this game was played at Stamford Bridge. We talked about, do you play in the ground in the smaller ground?
In Kingston,
open up the big stadium. It drew 10,769 fans. Stamford Bridge holds, 40,000, 42,000? Yeah. I kind of feel the women's game needs intermediate stadiums here.
Well, maybe. I don't, but not in this case. I think in this case, Stamford Bridge was the right stadium. It should have been more full. I'm sorry. You have the best, you're a Chelsea fan. You have the best team in Europe with Barcelona. You have the best squad. You've lost one game all season. You play good football. You've got superstars of the women's game. Even if there was some rotation made in this game, it doesn't matter. You've got an amazing team. It's not like if you were rubbish and you didn't want to go and watch the girls play. Okay, maybe. But this is different. They needed the fans to overturn that deficit from the first leg. This is a massive game. You've never won the Champions League. This could be the year, and yet nobody shows up. Nobody turns up.
10,000.
Okay, 10,000. The tickets were £8 and between £8 and £25.
So that's between $10 and $30.
Yeah, so you still had cheap tickets. If you didn't want to spend £25, you could still spend £8, £12, £20 and go to watch your team.
And we should also point out that Thursday night, there was absolutely nothing going on. But here's the misconception, right? I think to some degree. I know for a fact, because I've spoken to, there isn't a lot of market research on this, but there is some, that there are fans, say, of Arsenal women's team, which has been around forever, don't care at all about the men's team.
No, it's
and
true.
They're not fans of the men's team.
Yeah.
In fact, I know somebody personally who is a West Ham season ticket holder and a fan of Arsenal women, and she goes to watch West Ham for the men and Arsenal for the women. Right?
Yeah.
So the thing here is, do we want the fans of Chelsea's men's team to go and support this just because they're wearing blue shirts and they're called Chelsea? Or were we expecting a bigger turnout from the fans of Chelsea women? And then does it play to the fact that this game presumably was on television somewhere? I genuinely don't know. I think there has to be some sort of reality check, right? We know Arsenal can fill their stadium.
They had
because they've done it before.
28,000. They had 28,000 the day before against Real Madrid.
Okay. And Arsenal can do this because they're a long-established club. They have a big history in the women's game. I'm assuming the tickets were probably comparable price to this.
Yeah, I think so.
In the past, Barcelona Athletic have done it by giving away tickets. I don't know that that's necessarily a solution. Chelsea as a club lost money on this game because I'm sure it cost more to open up Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
I just think there has to be some sort of planning, reality check, maybe smarter marketing people involved. I don't know, because 10,769 in a 40,000 seat stadium, it does not look good. It just does not look good visually on television.
Also, Gab, 10,000 for Champions League quarterfinal, second leg, when you have a 2-goal deficit, when you are the best team in the world, arguably, with the best players of the women's game are yours, and you're not, and nobody, I don't know. I found that, I was really disappointed by that. And I cannot, sticking with Chelsea, I cannot believe we're still talking about this, Gab. But the £2.3 billion that Roman Abramovich received from the sale of the club at the time to Blueco are still sitting in his bank accounts. And now the UK government could finally be getting involved.
This is beyond surreal. This will have to go. I hope there's a full investigation. I hope heads roll. The government at the time evidently structured this completely cack-handedly. So they after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the attempted invasion, when the war started, they went to Roman Abramovich and they basically put sanctions on him. He worked out a deal and sanctions on his assets, including Chelsea. You remember, it was going to affect them. So he says, fine, I'll sell the club. And obviously then we went and sold it to Clear Lake and Taboli and whatnot. For some reason, Abramovich said, okay, the money will go into a pot for victims of the Ukrainian war, for the war in Ukraine. They didn't clarify whether it meant Ukrainian victims in Ukraine or all victims of the war. Now, who does Abramovich mean by all victims of the war? I don't know, but I'm assuming there have also maybe been ethnic Russians who've been displaced or whatever. Maybe this is what Abramovich wants to do. Whether you agree with it or not, the government didn't clarify and didn't specify what it was. So I can see Abramovich's point of view, saying, wait a minute, you're sanctioning me, means you're freezing my assets. You're not taking legal action against me to take Chelsea away from me. You're just freezing my assets. You're going to make me sell this. Let's face it, they're also doing this because they hope that he was friends with Vladimir Putin and they could somehow, reach some sort of peace deal earlier or avoid the invasion. And now you're telling me, we agreed. And it's like, no, I'm not going to budge on this point. It has to go to all victims of the war. And then we figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, then the lawyers get involved, my feelings there. And the reality is this, what they call a deed of undertaking, which sounds like some sort of made up legal term, like a lot of crap with lawyers, is still there. And the money's still sitting in the account. It's a good thing it's accruing interest. The absurd thing now is, if the war were to end and they reach a peace deal, I'm assuming Abramovich would get the money. He would get to keep the money. I mean,
if the money is still on his account and the account are unfrozen,
it's his money.
Yeah.
It's his money. He's never been, the government never made a legal case against him and said, look, because you're friends with Putin, because you benefited from this, we have the grounds to go. So Richard Caborn, who is the former sports minister, like a million years ago, has written to the prime minister in England. He says he wants them to intervene in the case. I don't know what the prime minister can do here, to be honest, at this stage, once you've signed this agreement. It's, I hope the most important thing is that there's peace and people who were affected by it get help. But this is seriously one of the most cack-handed things that lawyers and governments have done in a long time. Arsenal are getting into the dating show business. Jules?
That's right. It's a new initiative, Gabby, that the club has just announced, where you'll be able to go on a blind date if you go to an Arsenal match at the Emirates this season. If you're an Arsenal fan and you're single, you can maybe find the love of your life and combine football and your love life by trying to find somebody in the big match, I think they call it, this initiative.
Yeah, it's a big match, originally.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's already there. It's already different. Nobody else is doing it. So it's right to give it a go.
It's like a standard dating show where they set you up. Obviously, you have to give your preferences.
Yeah,
they match you with somebody.
If you don't smoke, what do you like, etc.
You meet you meet somewhere before the game for a drink or a cup of coffee or matcha tea, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then you go to the game and the cameras follow you everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's entirely genuine and spontaneous.
It would still be lovely.
I
At
think
least
it's
you
just
know that your potential partner also loves Arsenal, so it's not just like, one of those where there's tension in the
sure
cup.
nobody would sort of pretend so that they could be in some crappy documentary on the Arsenal
Surely
website.
not.
Surely not.
This is going to work. I know this is going to work. Gab, it's not enough that Erling Haaland is injured, as we said in that Bournemouth game. He's also accused of assaulting the Manchester City mascot, Moonbeam.
Okay, so I'm going to be very careful with this story.
Yeah.
Because you can draw your own conclusions.
This is a real story, right?
This is a real story.
Okay.
So City have a mascot named Moonbeam.
Yeah.
Get it? Blue moon, saw me standing
Yeah,
alone.
yeah.
Which is, there's a woman inside it, which is good because it's perhaps one of the most effeminate mascots that you're going to see in a long time. And the mascot, obviously, there may be professional mascot people. I believe the mascot guy, the guy who played Gunnersaurus at Arsenal, was a professional mascot guy. This person wasn't. It was a woman. She was a temp at City, and occasionally she put on the Moonbeam suit on match days. And when they played Southampton, I guess when they line up, she's standing there, the players are behind her. She feels 2 blows to the back of her head from Erling Haaland. Apparently, Erling Haaland always does this to the mascot. I don't know. It's like a pat in the back or whatever.
But was it a hard one or was it just like a little...
That is one of the things that is in dispute, Jules. So apparently, she told her boss. Then they said, "Oh, look, well, it was Erling Haaland. It's not like it's Nico Riley who hits you in the back of the head. Ha ha ha." And he kind of minimizes the whole thing. Afterwards, she was given the chance to go home. She decided to work her shift as Moonbeam, presumably, wandering around in costume.
I think so, yeah.
And later, she vomited, suffered neck and head pain. Then she had to be assessed by City's first-team doctor, who suggested she go to the hospital. CT scan revealed no damage. So later, she raised this issue with the club. They have a safeguarding officer who, in her view, minimized it. They looked at CCTV. Apparently, it's not like Erling Haaland punched the mascot in the back of the head for no apparent reason. Yeah. Anyway, City claim, and I have to say claim with City for many reasons, that, he's only grazing the back of her head.
Grazing
Slightly
like,
touching, almost brushing.
Okay, right,
yes. Anyway, so she goes back into her temp job at the club. Then she finds out her contract's not going to be renewed. And so now the police...
And she's suing them, basically.
Yeah. They're accusing that City swept it under the carpet, didn't take her complaint seriously. I don't. Draw your own conclusions from this one. No, seriously, I hope she's okay. One of the reasons I'm not mentioning her name is that she doesn't want her name out there, so she's not doing this for publicity. Fair enough. This weirdo story brings us to an end.
Yeah, well, didn't
have a rough enough weekend. You'll be fine, Erling. We're going to be back on Thursday. Until then, love the game, love your neighbor, love yourself.